Well, the Liberty protecting home court, up 95-71. Rebecca Gardner to Maureen Johannes. The transition three, you betcha. She had 12 points, 4 of 5 from 3, as New York crushes the Fever 98-77. Brianna Stewart was all-world, 24, 11, and 7. Kelsey Mitchell with 16, but Aaliyah Boston, right, one of the best players in the game, just 1 for 8 and 7 points. Caitlin Clark being out certainly played a role, but those legs probably tired from that back-to-back. New York gets the win to end the first half of the season. Time now to bring in CBS Sports WNBA analyst Terrika Foster-Brasby and Terrika Ayala. And y'all, the Liberty played about as great as they could, right, without their MVP in Jonquel Jones. Their shooting percentages were video game numbers. The way they defended at the three-point line, also when the paint was great. Terrika, I'll start with you, though. What impressed you the most about the way the Liberty really showed out and played tough-nosed ball?
For me, Chris, it was that this was probably one of the more complete games that we've seen from the New York Liberty. I talked pregame about rebounding has been an issue, turnovers have been an issue, and quite honestly, just a little bit of that New York moxie has been missing from this New York Liberty squad. You can, of course, look to the Jonquel Jones injury, but that wasn't painting the full picture as to why this team just wasn't going full throttle. I think this was a better game for the New York Liberty, taking perhaps advantage of a tired, a fatigued Indiana Fever squad in their second game of a back-to-back, but they did the things I wanted to see them do. Points in the paint, they won that battle. They won the fast break points. They did better with rebounding. And so overall, a pretty solid game and great momentum going into All-Star break.
Yeah, you know, Chris, like Terrika, pregame, the one thing I said we needed to see was I need to see these guards. These guards have to show up and they have to play well. Well, let's look at the box score. Natasha Cloud, 14 points from her. Sabrina Ionescu, 15 points from her. You continue to see that the two people who needed to be key in the backcourt to add that pressure to guard the guards on the other end, to be able to continue to control the pace, control the flow of the game. They did just that. Sabrina Ionescu continues to show why she is the standout that she is. And I think that that helps to fuel Stewie. She talked about coming into this matchup, she wanted to play better. She needed to play better. Even a week ago saying they called a team meeting and it has to start with me. I've got to be the leader. So I think that this team understood what the assignment was heading into the All-Star break and took advantage of a team that really just seemed to be fatigued.
Yeah, they were fatigued, but you know who wasn't? Brianna Stewart. You know, for all the talk about, yeah, you know, she's shooting career lows here and this and that. 24, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal, and 4 blocks. She was everywhere. Terrika, what made you, or what made Stewie just so dynamic in this game, even in places where we don't see it in the box score?
Well, one thing about Stewie is that she knows how to make her presence known all over the court, whether that's being dominant in the paint as a defender, whether that's being an offensive threat, whether that's creating the space, bringing and drawing the double team. She took advantage of the mismatches inside. And tonight she just had a little bit more than everyone else had on the inside. And I love that about Brianna Stewart. But she also can shoot it. She's a nasty mid-range. She can definitely pull the ball out and shoot it from a distance. And so that is the one thing that I think Brianna wanted to do tonight. She wanted to show that she was going to be everywhere and really be the catalyst for the squad. And she did that. She took advantages of the mismatch on Aaliyah Boston. She took advantages of Natasha Howard. She really, again, I think they understood that this team was going to be coming in. Morality, they were down because they were not without Caitlin. Physically, they were going to be down because, again, Connecticut might be a last team on the totem pole, but they played them tough on Tuesday night, and they had to feel that coming in physically to a New York team that in comparison was relatively fresh. So I think Brianna Stewart did exactly what she knew she needed to do to keep this team headed in the right direction going into All-Star.
And Stewie knew this game was in New York City. Hey, let's go. This team, Breanna Stewart, they play different at Barclays. And that is something that I neglected to mention before the game, is that, you know, sometimes I be forgetting things. This was a game at Barclays Center. This is a New York Liberty squad that has leaned into everything that is New York City basketball. The history of the New York Liberty, the fact that until they won last year, the Liberty hadn't won a championship, and players like Breanna Stewart, they take that to heart. So there's a little bit of that soul that just comes with playing in New York. It's just a little different in any sport. It's just a little different when you play in New York for New York, and I think Stewie's showing that. But more so, I talked about her leadership. Breanna Stewart has the skill set, complete skill set of every individual on her team. And so when she's able to have games like this, I think what she's also doing is showing by example, but also lifting up players and saying, hey, this is what you can do with this skill set. And I think it's a beautiful thing. You mentioned Terrika, Sabrina Ionescu. I say jingle jangle because she's going to get them keys from Stewie pretty soon. It's going to be the Sabrina show. And I think we're already starting to see that transition. But that's what I love to see about Breanna Stewart with this New York Liberty squad. She can have nights where she does it all, quite literally does it all. And then there are times where she steps back and hunkers down on one aspect of the game, because that is what this team needs. Breanna Stewart, I don't even know what else to say. We done said about everything you can say. This is someone who knows how to win, and she loves bringing people along on that journey. She loves being with this New York Liberty squad and in front of those fans, and we saw it tonight.
Yeah, you can see how much her teammates really respect and rally around her. She's one of the greatest players to ever play the game, and she was a big reason why the Fever shot 36% from the field, 25% from three. We talked about how they're playing on the second night of the back-to-back, right, and no Caitlin Clark. So how much, Erica, I'll start with you, was this an example of them just having tired legs, or not having Caitlin Clark, who really gets things going transition-wise?
I think you can definitely make an argument, make a case for both. I think for me, it goes back to some of the discipline challenges that this Indiana Fever has self-identified, being fatigued from a game where they weren't on cruise control. They had to earn that win in Connecticut, and then coming in playing a New York Liberty squad. We've seen the games, the back and forth between Indiana and New York this season. So I do think fatigue had a huge role. Ultimately, though, they knew they were going to be on a back-to-back. Ultimately, when you got the news that Clark wasn't going to be in the game, oh, well, what are you going to do? Can't go back in time. And so I think it was more of that mental fatigue, just not being able to match maybe what they had on the scout, what they wanted to execute, and being able to physically do that. That's going to happen. I mean, you know, it's kind of how I felt Minnesota played in the Commissioner's Cup game. But what you need to do is find ways to bounce back, and Indiana will have a chance to do that. Everyone around the league is going to be celebrating on their court All-Star weekend. There's going to be a lot of fanfare. We've already heard the organization talk about that, even with regard to Caitlin Clark, and if she'll participate in any festivities, we'll see. But there is still time to flush this, enjoy the celebration, and then get back to work, because they're going to see this very same New York Liberty squad on the other side of All-Star.
Yeah, same. I think one of the things that we probably have to keep in mind is that even if Caitlin Clark had played, she had not necessarily played the best over the last few games as it relates to being on the road. Now, she had an incredible showing against New York in June on the 14th when they won that first matchup. But realistically, over the last couple of games on the road, she hasn't shot the ball very well. And so she's had to figure out how to be impactful in other ways. She's done that through passing the ball and creating assists. She's done that through being able to get the ball and rebound. But I say that to say that when it comes to offense, which is what was going to be needed against this New York team, that hasn't always been on Caitlin most recently. It has been between the big three of Kelsey Mitchell and Natasha Howard and Aaliyah Boston. And tonight, because of Stewie's play and Kennedy Burke being able to add that support, they were not getting that offense from Aaliyah Boston and Natasha Howard. They were pretty neutralized on that end. Aaliyah Boston was 1 for 8, 7 points and 3 boards. And so, again, when you are adding that type of defensive pressure, which you need is someone that's going to step up and create. And you tried to get that. Sophie Cunningham gave them 12 points tonight. So she tried to add some different offensive pieces. Ari McDonald got the start tonight. She tried to add some offensive pieces with 10 points from her, but it just was not enough. Kelsey Mitchell had to carry a lot of that load, and that is not a burden for Kelsey to carry alone. She definitely needs some assistance. And to me, the fatigue is the reason why she didn't get enough of that from everyone else. So yeah, it is Stewie and everyone else playing great for New York, but also coming off that back-to-back and just not getting enough offensive production pretty much put the nail in the coffin for the Fever.
Yeah, Natasha Howard and Aaliyah Boston just 4 of 16 from the field. And the way the Liberty shot on this night, that is not going to get the job done against the reigning champs. Now, Erica, you brought up the All-Star game, All-Star weekend. Stephanie White said that they're going to leave it to Caitlin Clark and her team, meaning her representatives, in terms of what her involvement is, whether it be the three-point contest or the All-Star game. In your mind, what should the Fever do? Because we're talking about such a global superstar who is needed to be healthy for this team to ultimately reach their goal, which is winning a WNBA championship.
Well, listen, I put a lot of respect on Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever for providing Caitlin Clark the option to make the choice here, because I don't know. I mean, I got to read the contracts and everything. I don't know if I'd be so gracious. I'd be like, sis, it might not be your time. And I mean, jokes aside, this is unfortunately, not this same leg, but injuries have been the storyline for Caitlin Clark in her second season. And we just broke down all of the ways that this Indiana Fever, putting fatigue aside, that there are things that they're working towards, that they want to refine before they get to the end of the regular season, and assuming that they stay in position to be in the postseason. Caitlin Clark is a part of that. Can this Indiana Fever team win without Clark? Absolutely. Do they want to have to? No, especially if you can get a healthy Caitlin Clark that can help to facilitate offensively, can help spread defenses with what she's able to do, electrify crowds wherever she goes. Again, crowd, we talked about that in this game tonight. Of course you want her on the court. So I think it's great that the Indiana Fever are giving Clark the option, the choice, because yes, outside of the X's and O's, the wins and losses, this All-Star does mean something to Indianapolis, and Caitlin Clark is a huge part of what's happening with the Indiana Fever and the WNBA right now. That being said, I don't know if competing in her first three-point contest and her second All-Star game is worth re-injuring or setting back her progress from whatever this day-to-day injury is now. I don't know if it's worth it. If it were me, if I'm Caitlin Clark, which, hey, listen, I wish. I ain't get no NIL money when I was in the NCAA, but that's another story. If I were Caitlin Clark, I would strongly consider sitting out. I don't know if that's the right option or choice. Who's to say? But I hope whatever she and her team, her representation, whatever conclusion they come to, that it's something that will sit well with her and that she'll find ways to be engaged and involved regardless.
Yeah, I want to say that I think there are ways to be involved and to represent your city and represent your team at the All-Star weekend without necessarily playing in the All-Star game. But I also sat in a press conference yesterday where I saw Caitlin Clark's eyes light up with the thought of being able to be on the court for her team, playing in her first All-Star game and participating in an All-Star three-point contest. That is loaded. Alicia Gray is also coming back. Sabrina Ionescu is in that thing. Sonia Citron is going to participate. Like, it is a stacked field. And so maybe she feels good. Today is Wednesday. That is going to take place on Friday. There may be a world in which she gets home. She's able to rehab. She's able to kind of get some rest. And it is a little different when you're shooting from the rack around the horn versus playing 5-on-5, running up and down the court. So maybe there's a world in which she's able to participate in a 3-point contest where it may be a little less strenuous on her groin and not so much participate in the actual game on Saturday. There are different appearances that she's going to be at. So there are different ways for her to engage with fans. I don't want this to be a situation where those may feel she can't be a part of the All-Star festivities because she's injured. She absolutely can still be the ambassador for the Fever, hosting their first All-Star game in Indianapolis, but just be smart and be cognizant of exactly what that risk is and which one is worth taking. I think participating in a 3-point contest may be okay, but I don't think participating in the All-Star game is a risk that you need to take.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you have to think about your long-term future. It's easy for us to say, right? We're not the ones, having to make this decision, but as long as she's able to come back, right, post All-Star break and be fully healthy, however long that takes, that is what we want, because when she's at her top game, she is one of the most exciting players to see. Terrika, Foster-Brasby, Erica Ayala, thanks so much for the insight.
Thank you, Chris.
And so again, it's been, a mixed bag, right? Without Caitlin, 4-6. They had some games where they really showed up defensively. With her, 8-5. You see the big differences. Points per game down without her. An opponent's points per game without her down, so they're better defensively. But they definitely need Caitlin to make sure this team can go as far as they want.